Yes, folks. Today I want to question what our true history is. Was New Zealand settled by Maori first, or was it settled by Europeans first? Now, I think there's enough evidence out there to suggest that our history is false, or at least partly false, but our government just doesn't seem to want to go there and find out what the real truth is. Now, for this video, I've taken a lot from Anne Plum's documentary, and I've posted a link to it simply because it's very well worth watching the whole documentary. But to set this off, we need to go to a book called To the Ends of the Earth, written by Maxwell Hill and presented by Phil Young. Now, I've actually read this book, and even though it's not that well written and it's quite hard to follow, it has some good factual information in it.
C. Hill, a New Zealand author, has written two books called To the Ends of the Earth and its sequel called To the Ends of the Earth and Back Again, which describe the voyages of the Ptolemaic sailors. And he refers back to the Alexandrian library there, where Claudius Ptolemy was a famous cartographer. And a contemporary of his was a man called Eudoxus, who sailed around the Mediterranean Sea 118 BC and then went around the Indian Ocean 116 BC and mapped as far south as Java. And so it's entirely possible that these Ptolemaic sailors were travelling all the way down here,
You can't quite see it here, but this is New Zealand down here and Australia over here. So these folks were navigating around our part of the world long before Maori got here.
and under, even in those times. And a century or so before that, Ptolemy III sent out this voyage that was led by Maui and Rata, and he sent out a flotilla of ships, and the names Maui and Rata are well known among the Polynesian Maori living here in New Zealand today. And we know that Maui reached McClure Bay there in Papua New Guinea because he wrote in stone a proclamation declaring the land as belonging to the King of Ra, that is the King of Egypt. And the name Maui is well known around the Pacific. For example, on Maui Island we have this volcano, and also we know that the Polynesians were travelling as far north as Taiwan and as far east as Peru, where the Kumara came from, and perhaps even Easter Island and the Pitcairn Islands and the Cook Islands, all the way down here to New Zealand sometime after 1000 AD. And Maxwell C. Hill, on the cover of his first book, has this outline of New Zealand, and in the middle of the North Island we see Lake Taupo, and that's a different shape to Taupo to what we're used to today, and Maxwell C. Hill believes that's because this reflects an earlier eruption of Taupo. And so this map was found on a stone pillar there at a river mouth going into the Hokianga Harbour way up north. And just south of that region we see all these stone walls in the Waipoua forest. And some people look at those stone walls and say, is that Yahweh that's written there? And when the Maori first came here, they knew that there were white people here, and they called them the Patupai Arahi.
Yeah, the Patupai Arahi, and often referred to as the fairy folk.
And the name Patu actually refers to walls and also to weapons of war, and the name Pai refers to excellence, and the name Rihi refers to a skilled craftsman. And so I believe this is how the Maori described the early European settlers that were here building those walls.
So now let's find out what happened at Waipoua Forest.
In 1981, the government called in the New Zealand Forest Service and the Land and Survey to survey all the stonework up in the Waipoua there, because they were going to clear fell. There had been a lot of pine trees planted on the western side of the Waipoua, and so there was a team of 36 and I was the 37th archaeologist. We were up there for over 12 months doing the work up there. And then the initial dating came through. 2225 BC. And the Maori guy that was in charge, next day he closed the whole operation down. There was over $500,000 of taxpayers' money spent on this archaeological thing. All the findings, mapping, all the work we'd done was deposited in the National Archives in Wellington with a hold on for 75 years. And Gary Cook successfully got some of them released a few years ago, but all the carbon datings, they've all disappeared.
Go.
There's one of the walls that we exposed up in the Waipoua there, and the top of that wall was ground level.
So it's been closed down now.
Oh, yeah.
You can't go into that forest at all?
Oh, you go and you might never come back out.
You might never come back out. Yeah, anyway, let's have a look at this.
DNA evidence. The fact that what the Maori called the fairy folk coexisted with Maori has been supported by recent DNA testing by scientific researchers. One such case, the first of its kind, was when a DNA test was performed on a 72-year-old Maori woman called Monica Matamua, which showed that she did in fact have ancient descendants who had white skin, red hair and blue eyes.
Okay, so let's go and find out a little bit about this woman.
We've always believed, from the history that was handed down by Piki Te Piki Kōtuku, our great-great-grandfather, that we came from this ancient place outside of Egypt.
Okay, I'll just fast forward a bit.
Here, a photograph of my grandmother and my grandfather, Te Araroa Karauti. And my grandmother was red-headed, and she had the green eyes, and she was a very, very fair lady. This photograph is of Janet. Of my 10 children, she was the only one that really resembled me. And she is the only one of my 10 children that had the green eyes. But apart from that, a lot of my grandchildren do too.
We couldn't believe our eyes when we first saw Monica's family. Right in front of us was a living representation of the green-eyed, golden-haired people we've been looking for. They're not just fairy folk of the forest, or mythical beings. They are real. We wonder what motivated Monica to publish her story.
Well, in 2006, I was at the hearings, and this witness was saying that we were no more, that Ngāti Hotu had been wiped out, eaten out. It was quite hurtful hearing this story, and I was sitting there and I thought, oh, the hell with this. I'm going to take this through the Waitangi Tribunal and prove that we still exist. And I gave my history, the history that was handed down from Te Piki Kōtuku, and the judge at the time, which was Judge Wainwright, she put it on the internet and it went worldwide, and there was a lot of hits came back from everywhere who knew of the people of Ngāti Hotu, and it was seen by the E-Local magazine, who took up the story. And from there I did my DNA with the Geographical Society DNA Registrar, and that DNA was sent to America to be analysed, and it proved that we were of Ngāti Hotu, and every bit of the history I gave at the Waitangi tribunals was correct word to word. And my DNA took me, it went to Germany, into Russia, America, among the Inca people. Now, in Peru, there's a cave there. There's painting in the caves that depict the Ngāti Hotu people being chased out and getting into their boats. But to me, from my DNA, We came straight here after leaving Peru, after being driven out.
In South America, there is plenty of evidence of native people with golden hair and green eyes. For example, the Oricano.
Yes, so it seems clear to me that her people were here before Maori. Now let's have a look at the tattooed rocks in Raglan.
Thus, we can conclude that ancient people had the ability to navigate to New Zealand. Number 1. The tattooed rocks. In the small beach town of Raglan, New Zealand, there are some 27 hard, basalt boulders that bear carvings clearly made by man long, long ago. The strange symbols do not match any known Maori carvings. Among the Raglan rock depictions are stick-like human figures, what appear to be rudimentary letters, figures which might be numbers, and a variety of strange shapes. They are somewhat similar to petroglyphs found in a cave in Irian Jaya, which graphically depict navigational instruments and ships similar to Greek vessels. In the tattooed rocks, one rebus, shaped like a reversed Y, is also found as a letter in the Phoenician writing from 1000 BC. Another, an inverted V, is also the Sumerian script character for bread, all of which is very interesting given that the Maori people, like other Polynesians, had no form of writing at all prior to European arrival in New Zealand.
Yes, and folks, I went there once and saw these rocks, and it was very sad to see our history just out in the open being completely eroded away and the government doing nothing about it. Folks, in that video I only scratched the surface. I didn't discuss the Kaimanawa Wall, the skeletal remains found in Taranaki, and how a lot of skeletal remains have been destroyed by iwi, and lots of other stuff. So I strongly suggest you go and have a look at Gabby Plum's documentary. It's well worth watching.